I got pizza story to talk about.
Yeah? What pizza?
Pizza Hut.
Stuffed crust?
No. Burnt.
Oh no. Like, they're just so consistent. How did you get...
How do you burn a pan
Yeah.
pizza?
It was a thin crust. That's why.
Oh, that's
So
your
they
first
just didn't
mistake.
change the settings? Going from
Yeah,
like one to
pretty
the
much.
other?
Pretty much.
Oh, that's very unfortunate.
I don't know. Should I save the story for the stream or should I
Oh,
save
we're
it?
already live.
I think we're live
Yeah.
already. This is just how things happen.
Yeah.
Just start
This is tonight.
mid-sentence now.
Yeah. It literally started with you talking about Pizza Hut.
So yeah,
Not sponsored by anyway. We're not
We got a
sponsored.
burnt pizza. I wouldn't have said anything. I would just eat the pizza, whatever. I don't care. But so my mom was like, "You're gonna call them, right? And tell them you got a burnt pizza." And so we're like, "All right, fine, we'll call them." We didn't really care. So Colette calls them, and then they're like, "If you didn't want a burnt pizza, you should have asked for lightly cooked." What?
The expectation
That
is
was
that
your
the pizza
response?
you're gonna get is
That was
burnt.
the response. That was the response they said.
Wow.
That's a very quick custom rep.
And so Colette was like, "What?" So she was like, "What the heck is this answer saying?" So if I want a normally cooked pizza, I am expected to ask for lightly cooked.
Just say I want
Nice.
Tim Hortons bagel cooked. That's everyone will understand what that means.
And welcome to the community. Hey everyone. This is how we're just gonna start streams now. Just like mid stories. I love it. Yeah, so Tuesday, exploring the libraries. Isn't that exciting? Yeah?
Feels like Monday over here. I guess over there, everywhere it feels like Monday. This
Well, that's
actually wait,
yesterday was Family Day for Canadians.
Yeah.
Canadians.
Canadians.
Yeah, it's
They
funny.
can.
I was talking to Joey yesterday, and he's like, actually, today's a holiday in the States. I'm like, it's also a holiday here. He's like, it's not President's Day over there. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. That's not what happened. But it is Tuesday. It's exploring the libraries. We got a couple of cool topics to go over. And as always, if you have topics that you want us to discuss, throw them into the Exploring the Libraries channel in the event server.
Enter.
Yeah. So are we going to start with the questions over there?
Sure.
All right. So the first question coming in from Killer Talks. So specifically calls me out, but what does Sid think about the new Flesh and Blood paper booster packaging? And is this the way you want Genesis to eventually go? I want to extend that to both of you. Will, have you seen the paper wrappers for the new Flesh and Blood set?
I have seen them being opened. I've never touched them or have opened one myself. But I assume they seem to open fairly nicely. It doesn't seems to still have a good seal. I don't know. I don't really have any experience.
Mm-hmm. They remind me of the really old, like, baseball cards. Or, like, candy wrappers. Skittle wrappers. That's what it reminds me of. Like, when I see people tear it, and you get the, like, you know, the paper Skittles wrappers where you just tear it easily. It totally makes me think of that every time I see someone, like, rip it across the seam instead of, like, opening it like a chip bag. When they rip it just across, it's like, oh, yeah, that kind of reminds me of Skittles. Yeah, I know Magic's tried doing paper wrappers in the past, but theirs was more like a natural box.
Yeah.
A natural paper wrapper. So there's kind of a different concept behind that.
Are these wrappers are actual, like they're sealed on both sides? They're like they have obviously they're the Everfest ones or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're printed. Everything looks nice. They just open really easily.
Yeah. So the thing that's really interesting for me is the fact that they constantly go around. Like one of the big sentences I hear a lot is that, oh, these booster packs are recyclable. It's like, well, the old booster packs were probably recyclable too.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if they weren't. It's just it is the thing that when you have a paper wrapper, it's easier for your brain to be like, yes, this is recyclable. We all kind of recognize that paper products recyclable, but not all plastics are. So
Yeah.
I think that's where some of the confusion comes in. Right?
It's a perception, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we've stated it's like our wrappers are recyclable. Everything from all the other games are recyclable. It's just they have to go to the right recycling plant. In people's mind, when you have a paper wrapper, paper goes in the recycling bin.
Yeah.
So you have that thought.
Yeah. And if that's what they're leaning into, then 100%, I think that that's a great idea, because I would love to see people be a little bit more conscious about where they move, or where they put their, used product, right? Throwing it recklessly in the garbage is not the best move. So in that part, I definitely like it. But I also don't know how it's going to be. Like, are these packaging going to still be protecting the cards after a year sitting in them? Or after 2 years, 10 years, right? What is a long-term protection here as well, right? So
that's why cards belong in a binder. Not in sleeve, no. Whatever.
Yeah. It is.
So is that an option with the companies that we're working with, or?
It's something we're investigating for sure, and if it is something we can go down, then I'm interested in exploring that. But at the same time, it's, there needs to be a balance, right? Especially the fact that the current wrappers are recyclable, and we're planning to roll out the recycling program, which.
Yes.
Still working on. I need to get that up on the website and get that out there. But with both those things in place, I think there's some time to wait before making a decision on our end. And see how if Everfest does this, and if Flesh and Blood does this for the next set. Because I'm hearing that the pricing for some of those paper packaging is going to go up by quite a bit in the next little while. So if that happens, and all of a sudden, prices go up by an additional $1.50, like, is that going to be something that the players are going to be okay with?
Steven said, will the paper packaging develop mold over time if not stored properly, similar to older board games? It's interesting.
Yeah. We don't know, right? And one of the things that I know a lot of people love is, like, finding those old booster boxes of, like, vintage Pokemon, vintage Magic, right? If you're sitting on some old, whatever your game is, preferably Genesis, and you're sitting on some old boxes on that, you go to check on them, 5 years from now or something like that, you don't want to see mold growing on it. That'd be very unfortunate.
Yeah.
But that's also, like, you'd still have that wrapper on the outside, though. You still have that plastic around it.
It's also where things are stored, right? Like, I think in Canada we're definitely more aware of storage and stuff in spaces because we go through wet and snow and all these different seasons, right? But you hear of these storage lockers that are full of, like, Pokemon cards, and, like, every storage locker I know of is like a one metal door away from getting blasted by snow and rain. Like, unless, I guess there probably are some inside ones or indoor climatized ones, but still, that's like, I guess if you don't have the space, that's your only option.
Yeah. I don't know. Alex, what are your thoughts on the paper wrappers?
So, the one negative I definitely have to state, because, like, we know the positives. It's about being health conscious. It just doesn't feel like a booster pack when you open it. It just does not. It doesn't feel right. You don't got the right smell.
It's like a candy.
There's a feeling and a nostalgia to opening packs. I did it as a child, and then when opening this pack, it doesn't feel the same, and that's it.
Yeah. And, like, the interesting thing about it is I'm curious about the process that it undergoes, because there are parts of it that do have a metallic shine to it.
That's true too. There was metal on the inside.
Yeah,
which was interesting.
And it's like, okay, then how is that being applied? What else is being done here? Because it can't be just wax and paper. There has to be some other processing done
to it. Interesting.
So, that's speculation, pure speculation. But even our manufacturer, I know, was looking at it and being like, there's something a little bit suspicious here. Like, it can't just be pure paper. So, I don't know. It's something I would love to see. I'm not going to jump the gun on it, but if it is a good path forward, then I'm not opposed to it, right?
Jeff. No.
Jeff said, the real question is, when will gum sticks be inserted into the packs? Well,
Soon.
everybody's been asking for Chase. So
Yeah.
we're about to reveal to you
Yeah.
that one in every case will come with a stick of gum in your booster pack.
In the shape
Alex
of...
does not represent Haunted
Yeah.
Castle Gaming.
One line main rabbit shaped gum piece stuck right on the rare, in between the two rares, and it just warms up and melts, and then you peel it off.
Oh, good. That's so much better than it being like slightly chewed. Just between the rares.
I'll just find Jeff's box or whoever it is, and I'll go through, chew them all, and send it his way.
All right. Nice. Next
So they're
question.
asking, no, this is important. They have more
Okay.
questions here. They want to know, is it going to be a stale gum, pre-chewed, or signed gum?
Sign. Excellent. I'll put some Sharpie onto that. I'll have to find some non-toxic pens.
No, you don't have to. I've gone this far.
I can sign it with my teeth. That's the type of signature, right?
It's all three: signed, pre-chewed, and
Signed an edible marker, Jeff says. Oh.
All right. Next question we got here from Sid. What are thoughts on promos, prints of cards that, if a champion is featured on the card, having the champion switch with others that could use it as well? So basically, multiple artworks where different champions are featured on the same card. That's been something that's been on my mind a lot. I would love to. I always wanted to do the like a funny alt art thing of Oten, where it's Kendra instead of Rain. That's always that was always my first pitch when we were coming up with that card idea. I'm like, it has to be Kendra, and everyone else is like, no. I'm like,
Jeff,
fine.
get to it. You heard the man.
But I like the idea of.
I agree. I think that's
Yeah.
a really cool idea. It's just
Yeah.
it comes down to time most of the time.
Yes, yeah.
You know, these artists, they like to make beautiful art, and they have to take time to do that. What's wrong with them?
don't you just drag and drop your champion and put it? No,
AI software just changes the pose.
Just make the hair different color and say, oh, Malik had a ponytail that day or whatever.
One of the things I loved doing was I had a deck which every single card in it featured Rain in the artwork. And that's doable because Rain actually features on two summons, right? Necrolich and Kabus. No other champion features on the summons artwork. So it's the only champion you could pick that actually could run summons as well.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the thing I did.
Oh.
Yeah, it's definitely something I would like to see. And then Jeff asked, along those lines, variations with art itself, like you see in other TCGs, with card number A, B, and C. We have that with the champions. Champions do have an A and B artwork. I mean, it's a lot of the things that are in the game are just beginnings to future ideas, right? So I'm not opposed to it. I love to see something.
I'll give a spoiler. In Origins, we do have A and B art.
That's true.
Not for a lot. Not for one.
One card.
One card.
Everybody gets one.
Just one card.
That's their starting point. All right, we got.
We have the champions. I'm assuming we have the champion art, right? Because that I always like that because I think, I know that you have different people's perspectives on the same champion, right? So you get two different, and everyone has their favorite one or whatever version they like. So it's kind of.
I originally for J2 wanted for the cards that had multiple artworks that were canon throughout the history, it'd be like put both of them inside the set. And specifically for the rares, but the problem was not every rare had two artwork. So it just felt like it was biased towards some rares over others. And it's like, yeah, let's just do things simple, get it out there, type of thing. But yeah, I think over time, when the team gets larger and the process is a little bit more refined, I definitely see more stuff like that happening. Don't see why not. I guess time and money. That's why not. Yeah. Cool. Those are all the questions from the actual channel. There is a bigger question, bigger topic that we need to talk about, which is the pillars.
Pillars. Ooh.
The Pillars of Genesis.
No, not those pillars.
Oh, not those 4 pillars. Oh,
No.
the other 4 pillars.
Yes. The other
Well, so
4.5.
it's not just the Pillars. Dark Brand doesn't have a timing on it either.
It doesn't?
What? Oh, it does.
Does? What?
Yes.
Am I wrong?
We should have talked about this before we went live.
Yeah,
No.
Dark Brand is a spell. It has a timing till end of round.
I feel like you're adding until end of round. I'm gonna double check this Dark Brand. Dark Brand's in J. Dark Brand.
Jin J2 as well. Who can find it first?
Everything without dark weakness gains dark weakness until the end of the round. Oh yeah, it's fine. I don't know what I was on about.
Sorry. So what did I add there?
No, you forgot to add the second the
second
until end of the round.
That was
Until the end of the round.
Well, you know, I'll just throw it a different. Fire Hill is also messed up. I got there.
Fire Hill.
Yeah.
Why you bring Fire Hill into this?
Well, because I can. It's the same thing. There's no timing. On
Fire Hill has the word while on or adjacent to. There's time it implies.
No, so there's a while when something is on it, but not referring to about the game.
Alex.
No, I am here to make sure.
This is text chat. Genesis text chat. Discussing how words work. I don't know why I'm going through this stack of cards. There's probably no Fire Hills in this stack of cards.
Alright. When a champion or summon is on Fire Hill, everything around Fire Hill without fire weakness gains fire weakness.
But it's just a wow. The additional
So
I see what you're saying.
The while is when the champion or summon is on Fire Hill, but then what it does is it gives permanent weakness out.
Yes.
Yeah.
The gains weakness part is still there without a timing.
Yeah.
So, that aside, there are a few parts to this that I think have been interesting conversations. One of them was 2 weeks ago when we talked about this topic. I said that to use the cards as written, right? Like that. Yeah. That was the thing. Since then, I've definitely had a lot of comments come back to me about that. I want to know your perspectives on it. Like, since then, how has that part of it gone? Like, do you feel that should we have, or what do you think the proper course of action?
Well, I felt that ruling was great because you used as written. I took all my Fire Hill cards and I wrote Alex wins on them, and as written, I just won the game on the spot.
Your real name is just Alex.
Jeez.
That's just the nickname.
Get this guy a burnt pizza. He is saucy tonight. So I think, I mean, in hindsight, right? Hindsight probably could have been, yes, definitely there's, a wording, timing related issue. Let's send it out to Future League. Let's let Future League tell us or play with this or focus on this and then come back and be like, oh, here's what they found, blah, 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 blah.
I don't know if that... So my concern with that is there's a lot of people out there who'd be playing the game within that testing period, right?
That's a good point.
Organized play going on, people playing casually at the table, right?
Yeah.
They can't just be like, oh, so we're not going to play Genesis for the next little while until this decision is made, right? Like, they need a decision right there and then.
It's true.
And it just felt like the most appropriate course of action is just to go with what's written in the rule books. That's already what's written. That's out there. That was my perspective on it, at least. Like, it just makes that decision making a little bit easier.
I'm gonna adjust your statement just slightly because you said what's written in the rule book, but the issue we're having isn't what's written in the rule book. It's actually the golden rule overriding the rule book, because the rule book is written based off of the summons branding and not the alterations branding. So there are people who argue that the rule book actually fixed this, because in the rule book it says until end of round.
The golden rule is in the rule book on page 12.
Well, yeah. No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Is like branding itself says one thing in the rule book, but the golden rule is saying, go look at the card. Some people were arguing that no, branding says a specific thing because of the rule book, but the golden rule always
supersedes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the text on the card supersedes the text in the book, rule book, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I understand making sure that the game doesn't come to a stall because a decision needs to be made is definitely sure. But I just wasn't like, before those types of decisions were made or even brought up, I wasn't playing with a pillar. I was never playing with a pillar because it didn't seem like it was worth the cheese space. But now, if you were to look at my decks, they're all pillar-based decks.
Oh yeah.
Like I went through and I made an air deck, I made a fire deck, I made an earth deck, and I made a water deck.
Yeah.
So
we should probably also let people know that if you're part of Future League, there is a survey out in Future League right now for people to give their feedback on the pillars, because this is still an ongoing conversation. We need to figure out what we want to do. So, yeah, that's interesting that you've shifted so much into the pillars. Is that just... Do you think that's... it's because of the change and it's just like everyone's shifting to it very quickly? Or do you think that this is the future of Genesis? Like, do you think...
So, one was I just wanted to test each one in its sort of, in my ideal perspective of what it would do, right? Which was basically the pillar became the build around piece. So I'd have enough of them in. The goal was to try to at least get it into the first 2 turns. And then I'm just a summoner that all my summons deal that type of damage, because the amount of value that I'm gaining, if I get that pillar down and get the champion weak on turn 1, my 2/1s hit for 3, my 4/4s hit for 5, right? Everything is being pumped up. And what I noticed was there's actually off-color 6 chi cards that have 4 damage elemental attacks that are just outside of playable because they're off-color or they're a little bit overcosted, but they're just great when the pillar is a permanent position. So we're looking at Black Rock Golem, Mongul. Like, these are all really strong niche, sort of less, they're not really in the mainstream meta decks, but they all do 4 damage. They're element based. And so if you pump that, that's a 6 chi that's doing 5 damage over and over and over, potentially.
Yeah. And I'm curious now, is that necessarily a bad thing, though?
That's not...
I'm not saying that there's an answer to that right now, but it's just one of those things that it makes me think. All of a sudden, you're saying, here's a bunch of niche cards that people weren't touching, weren't playing with a lot, and now they're given a home. That, from an outside perspective at least, I'm just like, that's kind of a good thing. It's nice to hear that some of these cards have a home now where they didn't before. Because, again, like, we printed them. We used paper on it. I'd like to know that it has some sort of home.
So I'll say that is a good thing. But then there is the opposite shift for the other cards that went up to the next level.
Okay.
Is when your Brooks are now 5/5s. They were already the top of the food chain. Now they're better.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, the people that benefit were the summoner decks. 100%. That was the benefit. But there's just... There are always going to be positives and negatives. The funny thing, what we were originally talking about deck building, was I did play the pillars beforehand, and I played some pillars currently, and then I went to play a deck that didn't run a pillar, and in this window I was like, I feel bad not putting pillars in my deck.
Hmm.
I started to feel bad that I wasn't doing it. I don't know what that means, but it's weird that I'm not planning to put a
You're
pillar
just
in.
very pillar sensitive. That's all.
Oh.
Alex and his pillars.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's just like I understand. I think if Genesis was elemental based from the get go,
I like to adjust that. I think if it was elementally balanced from the get go.
Elementally balanced, sure, okay. That this wouldn't be wouldn't be having this discussion at this point, but it's just to consider only having elements or running at least one element type in a deck going forward. That's hasn't been the norm up until this point. Doesn't mean it can't be for a while, but and that's not to say that the pillar. Again, we don't know what the survey gives you 3 options. I've already done the survey, so there's 3 options at the end. We don't know what the community selected option is going to be.
I do currently know the numbers.
So Alex, don't do the survey because Alex is just going to manipulate on the back end.
Yeah, obviously.
It's actually a tie right now.
1-1?
No, 3-3. 3-3.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's still oh, I was gonna say something and I lost the train of thought. Man, I had such a great entry with that too.
Well, so let's talk about the middle ground, and that's the interesting one. Is there is a group of people that say juice the pillars ever so slightly that they do until end of round. Because that's that middle ground where there was a group of people who, when they looked in the rule books, looked up just the branding rules. It said until end of round, and there's that weird middle group, which I have an interesting take on that because I think, while it's very unique, it gives a little bit more juice to the pillars. It is the most dramatic change of them all, because
on design end,
well, and errata end. It is it needs to no longer be a continuous if this is the route.
Right.
It needs to be either a trigger, and it's like, when does this trigger? When you place it, when something moves into it. What if when you place it, but on the next turn they're still in that awareness, but they didn't move? There's a lot of these little fundamental tiny things we got to figure out on that one.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds simple, but it's just like, oh, it's until end of round. But when does it give until end of round? Because if it's well, as long as you're in it, on that first turn you're until end of round. If you go to the next turn, you start your turn, you're already in it. It's until end of round again. Then you move out of the way, so you're actually getting the branding for 2 turns. There's these weird scenarios.
Yeah. I remember what I was gonna say, which was the question of we're trying to make a decision right now because there's a bit of a clock on it. But that being said, when how much time do we give the community to also understand this problem set? Like, how much testing does the community need to not just like swing in the direction of, okay, now everyone used pillars, but when do people start swinging back to be like, okay, here's the counter pillar deck. Here's the way you build around this. What are other cards that all of a sudden become a little bit more relevant?
Well, that's the issue. There is no counter play to the pillars as permanency because you physically cannot avoid them.
When you're permanent.
No, when they're permanent. Well, that's the question is, like, you testing them as permanent. How do you counterplay them? There is none because there's no ailment removal right now. The alterations, you can't respond to it landing, and because it's continuous, it's automatically going to be applied. So there's no counterplay in any moment of the gameplay of a permanent pillar. Now there's no actual gameplay usually when it's a non-permanent pillar on that turn, but usually walk out of the way following turns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, so there was a while where everyone found that I always go back to the OTK because it was also a great example of when everyone at first thought that this was, there was no way around this. And then the community over time found ways to deal with this and found, actual solutions. Is it that players become more strategical? Do some of the other decks need to get pushed a little bit more? Are we seeing other certain decks that we thought were just like dominating meta for a while, like Bolt Shot, become less relevant? And now other decks need to come in. Where does the situation change? And do some champions now also get a little bit more of a boost in the entire scene, which maybe they wouldn't have seen before? So I'm always concerned about making very quick decisions when it comes to some of these things, because sometimes the community can find ways to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how much of a swing is this, right? How much does this change the tempo, right? Because is it going from what the game used to be, just say 6 rounds on average? Is it bringing it down to 5, or is it bringing it down to 3?
Right?
Yeah. Because
For
that's
sure.
also, or is it still just staying the same amount?
Yeah, it's true.
I haven't seen anything change outside of like if you're doing like an OTK with.
Yeah, it doesn't affect the OTK at all. Me and Sid had a chat about that. People who argue that, wow, OTK is stronger now. No, OTK is meant to do it in a single turn. If they're using a pillar as their win source, they would drop that pillar on that one turn and kill you. Doesn't matter if it's
it's
or
coming.
not.
Yeah.
Like, for the permanent effect to actually matter, it has to be... Like, there are a few things that need to happen, but, like, if your opponent just didn't move, then it doesn't matter, right? Like, that's not a thing, right?
Yeah. So
I
find...
It actually does counter
Yes.
pillars. The other one that, like, I know it's not playable, but it does exist, is Neutralize Attribute, which you can get rid of the attributes, but I don't know if it's just for one attack or everything they do or what.
I'm pretty sure it's for one attack.
Yeah. But there are, maybe there are other things that become a little bit more relevant here. Maybe all of a sudden Shutdown becomes a little bit more powerful than Pressure Point, because spells usually have the elemental values. And then you have summons, right? So maybe summon answer things become a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely the summoner is the first thing that I sort of honed in on, was that their summons are now on the board, so those are permanent, and they're basically getting a +1 when and if they hit. They still have to hit. You still have to get them across the board. They still have to interact. But the value there is that every elemental summon attack has an additional +1 to it.
Yeah.
Now you could say, well, you could drop a pillar on that turn and all your summons are surrounding it, and then they could attack at that point. Like, you could still do the same thing, but I think it's the setup of, I'm on the other side of the board, I'm giving you this permanent weakness, and I know everything else in my deck will eventually, something will hit you that has that type of attack.
Yeah.
So I can then do the calculation saying, okay, well, this is, this Thunderstruck is now hitting for 6, or, my Wind Slashes are hitting for 3. I even used Blazing Strike for the first time. It's 3 energy and it does 3 damage now. It's like that's a great rate.
Yeah.
So.
So I think a big thing the community at least should be aware of is that we're on one side, it's that we want to make sure if we make a decision, we spend time thinking about it, and that we are open to changing things. We need to, like, this was one of those things I remember talking to Steve-O about it, and it's like, there's a lot of concerns that come up about Genesis in different fields, but we always talk about how gameplay is one of the most important things. So when something like this comes up, this actually eats at me a lot more than some of those other things. Other things, it's like, okay, over time we'll figure out how to solve them, or over time we'll implement them. But like, when the gameplay itself is now being, like, having a pain point, yeah, that's that matters a lot to me. Yeah. No, Idris's Fireball. Adam brings that up. It is one of the things that we talk about a lot. Yeah.
That's sort of that scale where I was talking about. Is like, there are those niche cards that get better, but there are decks that already just do fire. The best summon is Rook. It does fire.
Yeah.
It's just an easy fit. It didn't change the decks.
It was difficult to make a Or at least I didn't spend enough time on it. But to make the Tipicina hit for 7, it was tough because you're on your 8 cheese on the high end. Earth is not really in chaos very much. Very minimal Earth, other than okay, which is also on the high end. It was a tough deck to make, but I mean, hey, we'll try it out.
Yeah. And then I would like to see if some of these decks are built around the pillars that are doing well. Like, how much more effective would they be if you took the pillars out and just made the deck a little bit more well-rounded? Because that was also the thing with the Long Holy deck, which I know it's not to the same scale, but it was still a conversation where, like, when I play Long Summoners, I do the Holy thing, just a theme for fun, but I know the Long Summoner deck benefits by pulling out the Arcana Vigors and the, I forget what 6G Holy Summon I used, but putting in Giant Scorpion, Nizus, yeah, putting in Giant Scorpions and putting in Brooks, right? Like, that makes the long decks. It's
just because it's just the base damage is slightly stronger without having to do the setup. That's it.
It's are there times where people are building just say an Earth deck where putting in the Earth pillars is a trap? There's a better option which could have made the deck a lot more stable if you didn't make it Earth, right?
The trap is whenever you draw more than one.
Yeah, that's what happens to the second one. So I mean, to that point, we know that there's the Necros Swarm deck with the Gilded Stags and whatever. Maybe some people like the Goliath Sphinx Eaters or whatever. The Goliath Sphinx Eater is air attack, right? So my air build with summoners was a Necro build that then forced air summons to come out, and I used the Goliath Sphinx Eater and I used the Vada Sphinx because they are both air attacks that get pumped and they're free summons. And plus I can, it just basically runs that skeleton, but then I have the air added in. But
so,
for me, I think my biggest issue, and I know somebody who called it out, is actually the flavor field. That's at the end of the day is the biggest thing. Genesis is a tactical game. If a pillar comes down, you can't act with it, and you just walk away and you're permanently branded. There's no tactics to that. For the rest of the game, you're just dealing 1 additional damage. There's no tactics to that. It says, I played a card for the rest of the game, I deal 1 more damage to you. Where the old pillar there was this strategy for some decks where, pillar damage, you gotta move around, gotta avoid it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest fail for me. That's the biggest.
Or you're setting them up where they might move to, so then you can get them, right? So
yeah. And that makes more sense to me, right? Like, that's something that I feel, okay, that... now, if we were to make change, how effectively can we roll out the errata? Could we get that information out there, right? But if we were to do an errata, that makes so much more sense. A lot of these comments that I'm getting from different sources of, like, how much it's changed the game, I think it's just too much of a shock factor right now. And we haven't had time to recover from it, right? And maybe in 2 months from now or 3 months, or if more organized play was running and we saw a lot of different decks over time, it'll be like, okay, now we just found a good Earth deck and a good air deck, and the other ones maybe are, hypothetically, I'm sure Fire's still good, but like hypothetically, just say we found 2 new good decks, and it took 2 champions that people weren't playing with, or took a champion that people weren't playing with very often and brought it up a few tiers. That's actually not that bad of a thing, right? But the flavor issue, maybe what it requires is really just an ailment removal thing, which we talked about for Origins, right? So maybe it just needs counterplay in the game compared to a full errata. It's hypothetically. Right?
I mean, Alex, if you look back on the championship, if this was happening October before the championship, do you think things would have changed from the decks that we know that did well there? None of them were element based.
Yeah, I think we definitely would have seen more element based decks.
More element based decks for sure.
Yeah. I would agree with you, Sid, wholeheartedly. I maybe I talked about this earlier. It's like, if there was ailment removal, it wouldn't be as much a big issue. Because if an opponent would play their pillar early, now it's more strategic once again. When do I play the pillar? You play it early, the opponent now moves, removes the element.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the OTK because Raze came out after the OTK was sort of becoming the dark horse, or not the dark horse, but like the boogeyman of the game. Raze came out and you brought in Otin, you brought in Sidestep, you brought in Selective Amnesia, you brought in, a few things that maybe were too far, like some of the dark resistances and stuff like that. But all that came in, and you had to think about, do I still want to run this OTK? Because they have 6 options now in different varying colors.
Yeah. So, and then as for the flavor thing, at that point, what I would talk about is actually like, if you think of what brand, like the term branding is permanent, right? Like if you brand a cow, they're permanently branded, right? So it comes down to what is the right call, right? And I just don't want to be too hasty about it, right? I think we actually have an opportunity here to bring some cards out from the shadows of other cards.
Well, don't say that, Sid. Then the community will be demanding reprints.
But I do like the idea of Mongol, because Mongol is one of those summons I really liked. I thought the water deck would be a lot of fun, and it fell a little shy. So, if the
Mongol's gonna get you.
Sahas water deck could actually be playable, that'd be cool. All right, let's jump to talking about the pitch contest.
Pitch contest.
Yeah. Let's start with the winners. Where do I go to find the winners? Is it on the Kickstarter?
Yes, it is on the Kickstarter. I was like, where do you go to find the winners?
Okay.
I'm like, oh yes, I did make a link, the video and the 4 winners underneath on the Kickstarter.
Nice. So
congratulations again to all the 4 whoever you are's that have won
the next stage.
Have won into the next stage. Sorry, have not won yet. Whoa. You're in the testing phase now. This is when Alex and I come in, and with our big red Sharpies, we go, X this, cross this off.
All right, let's talk about these first. So, first place was Chain Spirit. So, 4 chi, 3 health, 4 awareness, quick beckon, cool. Basic attack 1, which is really low for a 4. Well, no, it's actually not that low for a 4 chi. I forgot it's 4 chi. 3 health is a little high for a 4 chi.
Yeah.
And then when Chain Spirit enters the arena, exert target summon around it.
Me and Will have deep dive talks about these. So you give us your opinion, Sid, and then you can tell us how deep you want us to go on each of these. Because we did testing.
Just the kiddie pool tonight, Alex. Just the kiddie pool.
You hear the kiddie pool for me. I go splashing.
I would be curious to see, why the 3 health. What are the big things you're trying to stop? I guess it's a lot of like enter the arena. It enters the arena while the trigger's on the stack. Something hits it for 2. So 3 health just puts it a little bit outside of that range. So I'm not fully opposed to that. The only thing I would have liked to see is the cast ability being tied to its awareness. So like either extending the awareness to left, right, forward, and then giving the cast ability, to a target within its awareness. That's kind of just a design thing that I would have liked to see more. But
so I'll say I think you're on the nose about the hit points. In testing, we determined that we actually believe it does not need 3 hit points. It actually could do with less and cost a lot cheaper.
Okay.
However, I think the awareness thing, it probably needs to do the around. It's going to actually be relevant a lot less than it looks. Happened in
it was
play.
Underwhelming.
It's underwhelming.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's definitely a card that if you're going first, you have more potential with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's geared to be a defensive card. It sounds like it's going to be a defensive card, but if someone's coming at you, it's double mood and it goes to swing, you can't switch back into this and exert it. It's swinging already. It's already paid the exert.
Yeah.
There are. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say the summon who has the activation. Like if it's their turn, they get to start every single stack, so they get to choose. There's not much that the Chain Spirit gets to respond to. Because the stack doesn't open fully during the move phase. It doesn't open at all, except for very, very special cases. And then once you go to the main phase or the end phase, the active summon gets to start the stack. So they'll just exert themselves first. So yeah, I can see that also. And then the quick beckoning is also not super relevant because then we got into the Zyfang issue where like some people like that, some people don't. But
I actually think that the only we're going to talk about four cards. And here we're going with my splashing. All 4 of these are vanillas, is what the testing came out of it. This is the most exciting of the vanillas because it's got that unique bottom text and a quick button. So it has 2 unique things. That's what we're gonna come down to when we talk about the rest. But because it has that quick beckon, you have a slightly more uses of it, maybe to evade something moving towards you.
Yeah. Or like the rare case where Living Shadows is gonna hurt you. You're like,
or something.
Just stop the Living Shadows.
But there was a tension when we were testing it because if my opponent, like say I was using it or Alex was using it, if the opponent had more summons on the board, yes, you were able to maybe get exert this one, block this one, but it died because there's so many summons attacking it. And anyways, after it did its thing. So it was like, okay, yes, I kind of gained some value, but these are already surrounding me anyways. I'm sort of just delaying. I'm not really gaining anything. But
yeah.
What's the next one?
Let's move on.
Okay. Bloodhound. So 4 health, 6 chi, forward awareness, 11 aura to beckon, fragile beckon. So for 5 aura, you can beckon it out, but it enters the arena with 1 HP, and it has drain attack too.
Yes. So obviously the biggest perception, because I wasn't there for the testing, was this is a swift drain. We were expecting this to be really strong, and it was good summon. That's about it. It did not ever blow out any games. Facing it, sure, I could let it gain up to 10 health and just ignore it. It's only doing 2 damage a turn. It wasn't doing enough damage output to win a game. I was very excited with this summon because in future leagues, somebody's like, I'm so excited to play this with Odara because then you can do the 2 damage, you're going to gain 2 life. And I played it, and I built this deck, and I realized what I'm doing here is whipping the summon to do 2 damage. Any summon with any champion with 2 attack could do this and not have to pay 4 energy. Because it was just a straight, the summon would lose 2 health, it would gain 2 health. I didn't gain anything. It ended up being... It was just like, what was the point to actually even whipping these?
and we found that also that the difference between 11 and 5 over 4 or 5 rounds really
wasn't relevant
either. So
yeah. See, now if the fragile beckon was an energy cost.
Ooh, don't get us excited, Sid.
Well, that's the thing. The thing is, one of these is gonna be moving forward, right?
Yeah.
If they're not exciting you now, what could we be doing to push them?
Yeah, that's true.
Because going back a little bit to Chain Spirit, the thing that holds it back, and this is a big thing about Genesis, is most cards that just stall summons are always disfavored to cards that can just straight out kill that summon.
Yeah.
It's not like in other TCGs where sometimes you just want to lock down creatures. In here, if you can kill them, you kill them because them getting that extra turn at some other round, it hurts you in the long run.
Yeah.
So here, like for chi, you'd rather just have something that deals 2 damage, a long range attack that deals 2 damage because then you're more likely to be killing things. But with Bloodhound, if the fragile beckon was a little bit more like one of those kind of combust situations where it's okay, early game you're gonna be paying the aura, late game when you don't have aura, well here's another cost.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that combust is really exciting about is when you get to late game and it's like, oh well, I don't have any other resources, but I can still play summons, and your opponent's like, oh shoot, like now I gotta deal with the summon.
Now you have to deal with it at the late game, yeah. All right, we got what's next one? Fierce Mole.
3 health, left, right, forward awareness, 5 chi, beckon for 13, earth attack 3, and burrow. So it can move on to occupied spots. Fierce Mole cannot be targeted by champions and summons with flight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some Kun hate there, eh?
This one still needs testing more because I guess we never actually did pair it against a flight-based deck. Did we will?
But that's the thing, though. We said like if
we wanted to test it in its regular and as
we
a
want to
normal
test it with the
summon.
best case scenario, right? And right now, what's our flight as angels? The angels aren't really coming after this, and this can't attack the angels, so the angels just going to ignore it and go right.
Oh,
for the
you're
champion.
right. I didn't even think about the fact that it couldn't just attack the angel.
So like it's this is sort of in that space where, and I mentioned this morning in Future League, is like when you compare it with what we already have is parry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Right. This can still be targeted. Parry is just a bit slightly stronger and more playable version, even though it's at a higher chi because it can't be targeted. Parry.
I don't know. I can see the comparison, and I can see that where parry will more games because it's sort of the mini angel effect. This is a drastically different parry where this can double move and attack for 3. Parry's an action speed attack. There's so much different from it. A lower chi, same damage output, a great awareness, are very good against Kun.
But we tried that. Like we tried the dense fog with the mole, but its awareness count as a nombo with the dense fog, which puts everything to occupied. Right.
So this whole entire thing of can't be targeted by champions summoned to a flight. There are only a few cards that are relevant here, right? We're talking about Angel Retribution, maybe Vatha Sphinx, and Kun. Because
that's
even
Death's Companion.
Oh, Death's Companion, okay. But even with the enchantment of flight, you don't actually gain flight, so that doesn't even do anything, right? So, Burrow here, there are only like 2 decks, really, that you need to think about. 2 decks on 1 champion. But all other champions are just going to deal with this as a regular 3/3 and 13 aura. That awareness is a little bit nice. But we're not talking about elementals, right? 13 aura, 3/3.
Yep. Elemental with upside,
Yeah. It really comes down to what are your other options at this chi slot. Because if you're a Vellum, then you're looking at Gilded Stag, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm sure there are other things to look at. So it's hard. It's hard to justify this.
Yeah. But that's what I was saying. At the end of the day, they're all fine. They're all good. They're just not exciting. They don't go above and beyond what
it's not necessarily a bad thing, though.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing at all.
No.
Because sometimes you need to have cards in the set that are just whatever, good, And all of these are great in draft.
Yeah.
They definitely get a power boost in draft.
Yeah.
Anyways, what's the last one?
Well, wait, before we go, I want to say one last thing. Will just wish that the flavor of the mole could attack on its spot rather than the left forward right awareness.
I wish it had no awareness. Moles are blind. Burrowing on the ground, no awareness. It just attacks, comes up from underneath.
Yeah. Okay, continue on.
Doug Trio in my life.
Continue on.
Hippopotamus. So 5 health, forward awareness, 6 chi. Starting off strong there. 14 aura to beckon, basic attack 3. Modify attack. When there are more than 3 enemy summons in the arena, Hippopotamus's attack becomes X, where X is the number of enemy summons in the arena.
No.
So actually, it's hip-hopopotamus.
This is the most disappointing because it ended up performing the best out of all 4. That is why it's the most disappointing.
Thank you. Now, did this perform well, or did the Stone Protector blinking it in and hitting you from the side? Did that perform well?
But that's the thing is like if you just look at its core body, it's good enough as a 3/5.
Yeah.
Then in the right matchup against summoners, then it gets to the actual power level of this is a good summon.
Just because I hit you for 10 twice with 2 of them, don't be salty.
I'm not salty. I'm saying that this performed the best. That's what it's salty.
I can see it on your face. You're holding back.
We also gave it the optimal scenario.
The best scenario. Yeah, we did see it at its best. Yes.
But like once again, if you're not facing the optimal scenario, because we for this one specifically, Will built the teleport deck they talked about, where you would blink it over to your opponent after they played all the summons, and then they'd get to smack really big. You can't build a deck reliant on your opponent.
No. Yeah.
The thing that I like about this is that it's not purely relying off of your opponent. It's not like if it just only had that modified, like if it was just a basic attack X,
Yeah.
where X is the amount of your enemy summons, then I would be like, okay, yeah, no, this is. But the fact that it's either 3 or higher.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes,
It has that safety net. Yeah.
Yeah. And 3 attack, it's. I mean,
It's
we
pretty
see a
standard
lot
for
of
us.
yeah.
6G.
We see a lot of good, solid 6G summons. Yeah. I think the only comparable at this point is the Thymos Giant Scorpion, right?
Yeah.
Those would be like, you'd be debating which of these 2 to run. But if you're not playing Thymos, then this is a pretty decent summon.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got 4
the-
minutes. We should
yeah.
move on to this week's contest.
Well, I want to say, what are the next steps, just so the community knows? What happens after these get tested?
Well, yeah, we're testing them now, and
Okay.
I think we're still testing them while it goes on, because I don't think we have to make a decision till later, right?
So the step is we need the full pool of everything.
Okay.
And then we're going to also be looking at invasions, because these cards will be going into invasions. So obviously, if there's cards that match perfectly the slots for invasions, then it's easy to just say this one wins. That's easy to do.
Mhm.
But until we've gotten all our full pool, then I can correlate it with the actual set.
Because you have to decide how many you need, right?
Yes.
Pretty sure that link will work. I shared the link into the chat. If that link's working, great. If it's not, then let me know so I can share the proper link. But just like we did last time, might as well let the people who are watching live right now get some early access. So
Try the link out.
do you want me to just read them quickly to go through
Sure.
them? Or, all right, so we got so the theme this week is techniques and alterations. So chain spear awareness is forward, far forward. So like bolt shot awareness. Swift range attack, range fire attack 3. You deal, so it's just 3 fire damage, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And then creeping fang vines alteration.
I think I messed up Chain Sphere.
Yeah, right. Like 7 energy.
I messed up.
I messed up
damage. I messed up Chain Sphere. Oh.
People don't vote. Don't vote yet.
Don't vote on it. Don't vote.
I'm voting. I'm voting right now.
Oh,
All right.
no.
Creeping fang vines. Alteration 5 chi, 2 HP. Action create 11 aura. So trigger creeping fang vines. Whenever a champion or summon moves on or is placed on this card, it takes 1 damage. And then at the end of the round, take 1 copy of this card from your subconscious and place it on an unoccupied spot adjacent to it, not containing one of these already. So does this exponentially grow then? So you get 2, then next round you get 2 more, then
Oh, yeah,
after that
each
you
one,
get
yes.
4 more? Okay,
Yeah, I think
so it'll
so.
cover the arena in 4 rounds, right? I think.
You can't put it on one other one, so it depends where you place
Yeah, it
it.
depends where.
So if you place it in the middle,
One.
it would be
2.
3, 4, 5, 6 rounds.
2, 4, 6, 8. No, 2, 4,
Mm-hmm.
8, 16, 32. Yeah, 6 rounds.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Earth
Yeah,
Spike
yeah.
next. 7 chi, awareness is far forward. Swift Earth Attack 5 for 7 energy. And then trigger execute if you deal damage to a champion or summon with Earth Spike. Then you may move them if possible. Okay, so you're actually moving them. This isn't like Malicious Persuasion where they can move themselves.
Right.
Okay. Fling. So awareness far forward. Execute 3 energy. Place target champion or summon adjacent to you and spot in Fling's awareness. Okay. And if a champion or summon is placed on a spot by Fling, then you deal 2 damage to everything on that spot. Cool. So you're just
you're
tossing someone onto a spot
Yeah.
and they explode.
Throwing them into their own summons or whatever.
Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Okay.
That's pretty cool. Head bash 6 chi forward, energy 5 cast. Is this supposed to be a cast? I assume
It's probably an
supposed to be
execute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Deal 1
probably.
damage to a target in head bash's awareness. If a champion or summon is dealt, if a champion is dealt damage by head bash, they may pay 10 aura. If they cannot, you deal 2 damage to them. Okay, interesting. All right, improvise aura slash. So awareness 4 chi forward, far forward. So bolt shots awareness. Range attack 2 for aura and energy. And then immediate unstable backlash. If you have dealt damage with improvised aura slash on an enemy's exert
Turn.
if you
And it must be on an enemy's turn. On an enemy's turn.
I assume.
Where you guys at?
Improvised aura slash.
The last line there.
Jeez, let me. Why is there so many mistakes? I gotta call up my underling. My underling here has clearly failed me.
It's not me, guys. That's not.
It's Lionel. I'm calling him out. Lionel, how did you do this to me?
All right, Jalara Tunnels.
3 chi, 6 HP, action create for aura and energy, so 16 aura, 3 energy. And then trigger execute when it enters the arena from your thoughts. Place a copy from your subconscious on an unoccupied spot in the arena. And then tunnel. Whenever champion or someone moves without aerial onto the tunnels, move onto another tunnels. I assume they may exert if they do move to a target Jalarian tunnels in the arena. Okay, so the wording's a little confusing, but the idea is you just move from one to the other and then exert yourself.